Hey guys, welcome to this new tutorial about the particle system in Cinema. In this one, I'm going to show you how to make particle change direction in 45 degrees angles. I'm not going to cover the scrolling text animation, but I could make a separate video on that if you're interested. So just let me know in the comments. So basically this is going to be the end result, and you can buy this file from my Gumroad page if you want. I'm going to leave a link in the description. And this is also a nice way of supporting my channel. Okay, so let's do that from scratch now. Okay, so right away here in Cinema, we're gonna hit Ctrl D and make sure we are in 25 FPS. I want to make this longer. Then I want to add a mouse spline and I set the offset here to -50 and the display mode to line. And with the mouse spline selected, I'm gonna add a spline emitter. So this one is emitting from the mouse spline. Let's go to the properties here and set this to axis, and we want to emit on X plus. And we want to make sure that the Y axis is 0. So we're going to select the particle group here, and using shift, we're going to add a math. I'm going to call that math Y. And here we want to assign 0 for the Y position. So this way we make sure that this is perfectly flat. So here I'm going to go to the filter, and I don't want to see the work plane. Okay, let's call that main and rename the group as well. And what we want now is selecting the main, and we want to add a tracer. Okay, so the tracer is tracing those particles now. And what we want is not a constant emission. So for the emission mode here, we want a shot. So we only have one set of particles at frame 0. As you can see here, they are not perfectly aligned. So maybe we could set the mode to point here. And now when we hit play, you can see that those are equally spaced now. And here the starting is not aligned. So first we want to draw those particles so we see them a bit better. Let's go to the emitter here, properties, and set this to 0. So nothing moves anymore, but they are perfectly aligned on the spline now. In the main here, we could add another math node. So this one is going to be math velocity. And in here, we want to assign velocity speed. So let's set this to some number. Okay, so this is much cleaner now, but it's too clean and we don't want all of them traveling at the same speed exactly. And here, to break that up, we could add a shader field. And for the shader field here, I'm going to add a new noise. In the noise, I'm going to set this to cell noise. Okay, and so now we want to get back here. And for the value of the field here, let's try 1. Okay, better. Maybe we could set this to a higher number, maybe 300. Then in the noise here, we could layer a second one. So let's add a layer and get in there. Just move that up here. And then here inside this one, we're going to set this to another number and set this to multiply. Okay, and here you can see that those are barely moving. And this is because of the black values we have here. And we could simply add some brightness to that. And something else here, you can see they speed up and slow down. And we only want this to be happening on frame 0 of the particle life. So let's select the math velocity here, and using Alt, we're going to use a condition. So condition velocity, and when the h is equal to 0, we want to assign the speed. Okay, now we want them to change direction, and we need a trigger. And we're going to trigger that using a field condition. Okay, so let's use that and move that here. Then I want to add a new reproduce here and move that under here. And this is going to be change and change. So call that like so. Okay, so here for the change, I want to distribute maybe 5 particles on the existing ones. And I want the speed to be 0. Let's check the radius here. So here we want to use those to trigger a change in the direction. So we're going to need a new field condition because we want to use that as a field. So this is going to be field condition turn, and the field is going to be this change group. Here we want to select the nearest points in a 5 centimeter radius. So if I select this using shift, I add a turn modifier. Doing that, we are sending them in the Z direction. We want them to use a custom direction. So here they are going in Z direction, but we want them to turn maybe 45. We would like this X vector to be sometimes -1, so they can go to the other side. And we want to switch between those two values randomly. And to do that, we're just gonna select the turn and add a new expressor tag. Let's bring in the turn. Let's right click the vector here. And in the user interface, we want the subchannels. Here we want the X value. Then we want to add a random. And right away, I'm going to add a result. I want a random integer. So here's what we got. So if I hit play, it doesn't change. I want the animation refresh here. So this is updating now. And next I want a math node, and I'm going to connect this in here. Here I want to set the function to modulo, and I want to set the input to 2. So control drag this result and hit play. You can see now we have 3 possible values, and those are -1, 1, and 0. So here in the random now, I just want the positive values, and now the result of this is only 1 or 0. Okay, so now we could just add a condition, connect that here. Instead of 0 and 1, what we want is -1 and 1. So now they are moving in both directions randomly. The only thing here is we are doing this globally, and we want to use the alignment of the particle. So this is still not okay because we are missing the look modifier here. And this is going to be using the velocity direction for the alignment. And so now the result is something like this. Okay, one thing I forgot to do here is the change here. I want this to leave only one frame. So we want them to disappear once they trigger the direction change. Okay, so that's most of the effects. So just speaking about rendering, we could add a redshift object tag to the tracer here, and in the curve, we could set this to hair strands. Maybe make a new standard material, assign that, and we could make this emissive, for example. For the thickness here, let's set this to 0.2. So let's add a new null particles. So let's drop everything here in there. This is going to be the geometry. And maybe we could add a standard camera and a target. And then in the camera, go to optical, and we're going to set the target as the focus object here. Let's switch to camera view and maybe set this to 120 and add a little bit of bokeh here. This is still too big, so let's set this to 0.02 maybe. So yeah, this could be a way of rendering that, but I want to do this a bit differently. Let's go back to 0, and instead of that, I'm gonna select the tracer using Alt. I'm gonna drop that in a sweep NURBS, and with the sweep selected here, I'm gonna use Shift, and I wanna add a new move spline. Okay, so the move spline here could be a line, and we're gonna set the offset to -50 just to center the spline. So let's switch to simple here, and we want a length of 0.2, and we want 2 steps. So let's hit play now. Okay, and we want the H angle of the move spline here to be 90. And just to make sure those lines are not flipping, I want to disable the banking here. Okay, so next I want to add a point at the beginning and the end of the tracer. So to do that, I just gonna add a new disk here and set the radius to 1 maybe. At frame 0, I want to set this to 0. And at frame 25, I want this to be 1 centimeter. So control click this to add a new keyframe. So with the disk selected now, I'm gonna use Alt and drop that inside the cloner. Select the cloner, set this to object, and the object is the tracer. Okay, so we could drop that under the sweep here. So I'm gonna call this one ends. I'm gonna select it and add a new plane. Call this plane ends. So this one I want to uncheck the position, and then in the scale I want uniform scale and minus 0.4 maybe. Then let's go back to the cloner objects. Let's set the count to 2 per segment should be turned on. And here we don't want to loop. So now every line has a point at the beginning and the end. Let's maybe add a ground floor. So this is going to be the ground. I'm going to add a new null. This is going to be the scene. In this one, I'm going to drop the ground, the camera, and the target. And then this could be a bit bigger. And I want to move this on Y minus 0.001 just to make sure those are not exactly in the same place. Okay, so this is the tracer. So let's create a new material. Let's double click that and make this iron maybe. And I'm gonna add this to the geometry here. And of course, we're gonna need some light. So let's go to the dome light here. Type in IHDR Studio. Okay, so here, let's try this one, for example. So let's drop that inside the scene. And here I want an area light. Okay, maybe add a null here and drop those in here. Let's move back, and this could be rotated like this and move that over there. Maybe this is too strong. We'll see. Okay, but yeah, anyways, let's try to render that. So that's pretty strong. And what we are missing is we want something on the ground here. So let's add a new standard material and drop that on the ground. So let's double click that and open the content browser. Let's look for v1 underscore scratches. So let's say this one, for example, and maybe v1 deposit. I'm gonna select maybe this one. So let's double click, look for a color layer, connect this one here, and we wanna add those together, maybe something like that. Let's see. Okay, so those are too big, obviously, and we wanna just select this. Maybe you want the projection to be flat. Just get out of the camera, go to the texture mode here, hit R to rotate that 90 degrees. Okay, let's see. Okay, that's much better. Let's open that up. So let's connect that to the roughness. Then we could add a new color layer, connect that to the base color, connect that to the color, move that over there. And here, maybe we could add some slight color in there. All right. And then we could send that into the bump map as well. Connect that here, connect that to the bump map. Okay. So that's way too strong. And I want to reverse that. So set this to 1, set this to 0. The height scale could be 0.1 only. So let's rotate this camera just to see what we got. So yeah, I believe this is way too shiny now. Okay. So let's add a ramp in here. So use Alt input and connect that to the roughness. Just solo that. Maybe make this lighter like that. Set this to linear. Let's make this light smaller. I'm gonna select the redshift area light here, and I want to move that up like that. And then I'm gonna move that a little closer. Yeah. Okay, and now what I want to add to this is whenever we change direction here, I want a smaller dot to appear. What I'm gonna do is simply select those and control drag them. So how can we add those dots to this? It's quite simple. We're going to go to the particles, and in the main here, we want to go to the field condition turn. So every time we turn, we want to add a new particle. So let's select the condition here, and let's shift click the reproduce and call that dots. And maybe we could call the cloner here dots as well. I want to move the dots group just after they change. I want to set the speed to 0, and we want to spawn 1 particle per particle. So we want this to be constant. Let's draw the radius of this one. And here you can see that we are spawning a little particle each time we turn. Let's select the dot here, and in the object, instead of the tracer, now we want to use the dot group here. So let's uncheck the draw radius on this one, and then we want to go to the plane here, and instead of minus 0.4, we want this to be minus 0.5, and so those are going to be a little smaller than the main ones, maybe minus 0.6. Okay, and maybe we have too much overlapping, and what we could do now is let's open this up, select the tracer, and let's use another instance. Let's hide the geometry here for now. Let's go to the operators here, and we want a trim spline modifier. We want to drop that under the instance. Let's go to the top view for a moment. Here for the trim, we're going to set the mode to length. We want to start at 0. I want this to be happening on all the segments at the same time. So let's check per segment. And here you can see that you can trim this. So let's trim 1 centimeter. So here we have a 1 centimeter gap. And this is because we want to use this instance to kill particles. And if we don't trim, the end here is touching the particle and it's going to kill it. Okay, so then we want to resample this spline. So we want the resample here to be happening before the trim, and we want to set this to step, and we want a step of 1 centimeter, and we want to keep the points. So for this to work, we're going to need to select this, and using Alt, we want to drop that inside a connect, and we don't want to weld the points. Okay, so just to add a little bit more randomness, we could select the change here, and using Alt, we could add a new time condition, and you want a pulse. This should start at frame 0, but every frame have 50% chance of changing direction. So I want to add a new field condition now. This is going to be kill. I want to use the connect here, and I want this to be a spline object. So I select the connect. I want to set the spline shape to curve, and the distance mode will be radius, and this could be maybe 2 centimeter. We want to make sure this is selected, and using shift, we're going to add a kill. Here you can see that whenever we meet another line here, it's going to stop. Okay, pretty nice. But what I want to use that for is I don't want this to be active right away. Selecting the kill here, I'm going to use Alt and add a new condition. And if the age here is greater than 80 frames, for example, we want to start killing them. So that means if we get next to the connect and the age of the particle is greater than 80, it's going to stop. So just to add some extra detail, I want to add text to those smaller dots. And for that, we're going to need another group. Let's go to the turn condition here and just control drag the dots. And I'm going to control drag the dot group here. Delete this one. This is going to be the text. I'm going to call this one text as well. And here in the properties, I want to drag in the group. Then in the geo here, I want to select those two and control drag them. And this is going to be plain text and text. Okay, and here instead of a disk, I'm going to select the text. I'm going to use shift and I'm going to add in a new text like that. And I don't want no depth. I just want this to be 1 centimeter. So just be aware that's gonna be really heavy with this cloner. So what I would recommend is while working, I would disable the cloner on this one. So in the particles now, I want to select this and just draw the radius. And I want my text to be flat on the ground. So let's select the text cloner, go to transform and rotate on P minus 90 degrees. I've just typed in some random text like that and just control drag. Let me just select all the texts here, set these to bold like that. And also we want this to be aligned to the middle. And I just want to align this a bit more. And so let's just disable the scale for now. So yeah, I just want to use the position and set this to minus 0.4. We just want this particle to be spawned a little bit lower and to the left. We're just gonna go to the text here, and using shift, we're gonna add a condition. And when the age equals 0, still with the condition selected, I'm gonna use shift and add a math node. And here I want to subtract from the position. We want to affect X, Y, Z. So let's subtract 1 here and hit play again. Okay, so let me just check the text here. We are on the dots, and we don't want that. We want the text group, sorry. Okay. Maybe here we can subtract 1 on Z as well, and this could be 1.2 here. Okay, let's hit render. So that's adding all those little texts, which is pretty interesting in terms of detail. But maybe in parts like here, you may find this too busy. So what we could do is just adding another kill condition. And we already have one here. We want to use the same as this one. And we're going to control drag this into the text. And we don't need the age condition on this one. We just want the kill. So every time we are next to this connect object here, we're going to kill the text particles. For this one, we could simply dial back the radius to 1 centimeter. So we're gonna keep more particles. So yeah, that's up to you to decide. I like the more cluttered version of that. So I'm gonna just uncheck the kill here. Yeah, maybe those could be a little smaller. So let's go back to the geo, to the plane here, and we're gonna use the scale again, uniform scale. This could be 0.3. Okay, I just want to check this from closer. Yeah, so I still have this tag here, so I just want to delete that, and we are back to something completely flat. Here on the starting ones, maybe you want some text as well. So to do that, we're just gonna use the text again here, and instead of that, we're gonna use that right away inside the velocity. If you remember, this one was only happening on H0. I just want to make sure I delete the particle group here. The text here should go in the text group. Okay, yeah, that's interesting. Okay, maybe I want to have 2 different values for those. So this is text dots. I want to control drag this one, and this is going to be text start. Let's rename those as well. So text dots, text start, and this one should go into text start. Let's duplicate the cloner as well. And this one, I want to use the start group here. Sorry, I should have copied over this one, and this one is going to be start. Let's assign the start effector to this. Okay, so let's activate the kill just to clean this up a bit. So for the starting text here, let's go to the math node, and here this should be 0. So let's set this to 2. Okay, so here for the plain start, I want this to be maybe a tiny bit bigger, so minus 0.2. And here I just want to move this up a little bit, like so. That's it for the geo. So let's set this to 1.8 maybe. So yeah, if we leave this kill on, every time we have lines passing through here, it's gonna remove the text. Okay, so that's the result we have now. So if we want, we could have some energy pulse on the lines, and this would be pretty straightforward. Let's call this connect tracer field. So this is the one we are using for the field condition. And I'm gonna control drag this one, and it's gonna be the pulse. I'm gonna delete the resample spline and the trim spline modifier, and I want to look for a pulse. So let's bring that under the instance. Let's hide the particles and the geometry. Okay, we also want to hide the field here. That's now the pulse. And we could simply select the modifier here and set this to continuous. So this is always animating. Maybe we want this to be reversed. So maybe we want only a part of them to be reversed, or even everything. So this way, everything is going toward the spline. And maybe we want to randomize this a bit. Okay, so let's go back to the geometry and switch visibility on that. Okay, and in the geo here, we're gonna control drag the street maps, delete the tracer, and instead of that, we're gonna be using the connect here just to add some geometry to this. What I want to do now is just selecting the sweep here, going to the coordinates. I just want to move that a little bit over the original geometry. Okay, let's switch back to camera view, and then we want to assign this tracer material on the sweep. Let's go to the render view. Okay, so this may be a bit too strong. So let's bring that back. Let's call that pulse. And the best idea would be to render the pulse separately so you can deal with it in After Effects. Okay, maybe make this 100 frames just for the example. Open up the particles, selecting the particle groups, and I want to cache the scene now. I'm gonna add a new folder that I'm gonna call cache, and here I'm gonna call that cache as well, and save. Okay, and so if we now want to slow that down, as this is cached, it's gonna be pretty easy. I wanna set the speed to 10% here, and I set this to 1000 frames. So everything is 10 times slower now, and so here we can have some nice little shots. Just by changing a few settings now, you could get really different results, as you can see. You could also experiment with different emitter types. Okay, so I think that's it for this one. If you have any questions, just feel free to hit me in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I see you in the next one. Bye.